Well, back to the question of hysteria tonight. His critics in the media often say that Donald Trump is diminishing the American presidency, and at times there is some truth in that. But it's also true that in covering Trump the way that they have, many journalists have degraded and humiliated themselves. There are countless examples of this, but watch this one as an anchor from another network describes a conversation she had last year with Kellyanne Conway.
This is a woman, by the way, who came on our show during the campaign and would shill for Trump in extensive fashion. And then she would get off the air, the camera would be turned off, the microphone would be taken off, and she would say, "Blech, I need to take a shower," because she disliked her candidate so much.
Now, I have no idea if Kellyanne Conway actually said anything like that. I do know that TV anchors almost never reveal what their guests have said off camera, and for good reason. People come to TV studios so they can speak on TV. They do not come with the expectation that their private conversations will wind up broadcast to the country, especially when they're not present to defend themselves. In more than 20 years of working in TV, I have never seen that happen. And trust me, I've heard a lot of weird things uttered off the air. Television networks don't have hidden cameras in their bathrooms for the same reason. Even in media, there is a zone of privacy. Those are the rules, or they were the rules. That was before NBC videotaped Donald Trump without his knowledge and then leaked that tape 11 years later to the Washington Post in an effort to destroy his presidential campaign. That was not news coverage. It was political activism committed by news outlets. But none of the usual media watchdog types said a word about it then or now, because with Trump, all bets are off. Many journalists believe it's literally impossible to be unfair to Donald Trump or the people who work for him. Extremism in the pursuit of Trump is no vice. That's the view in newsrooms, and you hear it in conversations all around Washington, a city that voted 91% for Hillary Clinton last fall. Media figures, adults, smart people who have been around, who have perspective or did have perspective, they don't anymore. They've succumbed to Trump hatred that is so intense, it has destroyed their judgment and in some cases affected their character. I see it all the time. Where normal people see the president's flaws, and they do exist, they see crimes and conspiracies. The rest of us may complain that Trump is undisciplined and impulsive. Fair. They regard him as the single greatest threat to Western civilization since atomic weapons. Watch.
I think this is a potentially more dangerous situation than Watergate, and we're at a very dangerous moment. There is a cover-up going on to keep us from knowing what happened here.
A cover-up? A cover-up of what exactly? That part is often alleged but never explained because it's not necessary to explain it. The speaker isn't offering analysis. He's preaching to those who are already converted. His listeners already know that Donald Trump is evil. They don't need details. They want a sermon. And sermons are mostly what they're getting these days.
Donald Trump, in much of his rhetoric and many of his actions, poses a danger to American democracy.
Oh, wait, did you say democracy? What would these people know about democracy? Isn't this the same group that called on the Republican Party to strip Donald Trump of his nomination at the GOP convention? I think it is. The same one that called for the presidency to be taken from Trump at the Electoral College before his inauguration? Now they're lecturing the rest of us about democracy. That's right, even as they call for Trump's removal from office just 4 months into his job. Democracy. What you're looking at actually is a kind of conflict of interest. We don't allow reporters to cover their spouses or their kids. Why don't we? Because they wouldn't be able to see clearly. Their emotions would cloud their judgment. Their love would get in the way of fair coverage. Hate has the same effect on people. It distorts your view of reality. In the end, it blinds you completely. And that's where the American media are right now, stumbling around in a sightless rage, screaming. Someone ought to reel them in before they hurt themselves in ways that can't be fixed. Byron York has been around for a long time. He's now chief political correspondent for the Washington Examiner, and he joins us. Byron, I'm not defending the president in noting that something about the coverage of him is totally different from anything I have seen in 30 years here, and it's bad.
It is. On the Mika Brzezinski, Kellyanne Conway thing, I think that's a special case. There's a kind of a psychodrama that has gone on between Donald Trump and the Joe and Mika program. It's kind of a codependent relationship. MSNBC was that program at least, was quite positive toward Donald Trump for quite a while, and then they got really down on him, and it's gone back and forth.
Yeah, but if I could, all the times I've had someone sit on the set, you've seen it a million times, Democratic member of Congress, say something nasty about his own party, or give a more nuanced view of something, I would never even consider revealing that on the air because it's a private conversation.
But in a larger sense, I do think there was a realization as Trump neared the nomination last year, and it became clear that he was not going to go away. I think there was a realization that among some of the press that they thought that the threat that Trump presented was so severe and so dire that they needed to change the way they did business. And we saw this. People in the press spoke about it openly. Dean Baquet of the New York Times said, we're going to call out the lies. And indeed, you began to see the word lies and false and falsely claimed and that kind of stuff in headlines and first paragraphs of news stories that you had not seen before. So they felt that it was important to change the way they operated to some of the standards that they had observed for many, many years.
But some of those standards are immutable, and it doesn't matter who you're covering. If you're assigned to cover Idi Amin, you still have to be fair. You have to tell the truth. You can't lie in the service of a political agenda, period, or you're not a journalist. They know that. Why don't they pull themselves out of the game when they can't be fair?
Let me give you an example of this actually spreading much farther than just journalism, just touches on journalism. In 1964, Barry Goldwater running for president, a magazine published an article in which a number of psychiatrists said that he was psychologically unfit to be president. After the election, Goldwater sues for libel and wins. And something called the Goldwater rule emerges in the psychiatric profession, which is you don't pronounce on the mental condition of a person you have not examined.
Good call.
That Goldwater rule stays in effect for 50 years until now. And you're seeing psychiatrists, psychologists all over the place talking about Donald Trump. This is from an article in the New Yorker just recently. It said, with regard to Trump, however, the Goldwater rule has been broken repeatedly. More than 50,000 mental health professionals have signed a petition stating that Trump is, quote, too seriously mentally ill to perform the duties of president.
There's something about this president that brings out the worst in his enemies. Here's the final question, though. It's not simply a matter of being blinded to Trump and hating Trump so much that you can't cover him fairly, though that's happening. They have suspended judgment on the other side. Because they dislike Trump so much, they're withholding any kind of tough coverage on his opponents on the left. And that's just lying.
Yes, there's no doubt about it. First of all, Trump is the biggest story. There's no doubt that Donald Trump is the biggest story. He's the President of the United States, and the President is always the biggest story. But I think what has happened is that the White House has come to just sort of eat all of their news coverage. I mean, and we aren't seeing very much on the opposition. And there's a belief, I think, and you see this sometimes, that if Trump says it, it's wrong, and the people who are calling him on it or criticizing him are therefore right.
That is the assumption, and it's really distorting all of this. It's destroying our media. Byron, thanks a lot for coming on.
Thanks, Tucker.